Hey everyone, so we're going to go over how to edit your photos in Photoshop for in preparation for the website and also for your own documentation. So when you get out of school, then you can take these and enter art shows, send them to curators, that kind of stuff. So here I've got a folder full of the images. I'm going to use a couple of examples here. So this is how I like to get my photos into Photoshop, but you might have your own way, and that kind of goes for all the things in this demo. Everybody has their kind of working style. I'm going to show you mine, but there are lots of ways to skin that cat, so just be aware that it may be slightly different than some of the things you've seen before. So I like to right click on my images in the folder and then say open with and select Photoshop. And there it's going to open up. So I have three different images we're going to go through and kind of talk about today. They're all from the 2019 senior show, fall 2019 senior show. And these are all installation shots. Now, let's talk about this one first. This is a sculpture sitting on a pedestal. First off, this is kind of a difficult one as we have these doors behind here. So I would advise anybody that does a shot like this to not to change the angle of the pedestal, at least for the documentation. This makes it very difficult, very distracting behind the object. So I would change that angle, and then change it back for the exhibition. So if you want to take a picture, get a clear backdrop. Now, it's not to say you can't get rid of that, but that's a little beyond the scope. You'd have to make masks and kind of really change the whole background of the photo. It's a little more advanced. The second thing about this is this shadow here. This shadow is very strong, so this would be an example of needing to bounce some light on the inside of this box. Okay, so this was shot directly from the exhibition when it's lit, but if you're shooting your work, you want to get some shadow into that space. Okay, so this one is pretty good. It's so we're looking at the table here in the foreground. This is a table the artist made. I'm going to talk about how to kind of straighten that out and kind of adjust the white balance on this, but I think we'll start actually with this piece here. So this is a painting done on gessoed paper towels. You can see this is shot in the gallery. It is a little flat. Okay. Now the tricky part about this image here is that when you make adjustments, sometimes you can blow these little areas out, which means they'll get too white and you lose the detail. So there's a couple of things you can check. All right, and there's lots of ways to kind of adjust this. I'm going to suggest the first thing you guys do is go to Image, Menu, and then you have these right here. So you might first check Auto Color. Some of you photo folks might scoff at this, but let's take a look at this and what this does. So we're going to hit Auto Color, and that's going to significantly kind of brighten that up. You can still have the detail. So now we have a little bit more white. So we can look at other ways to adjust the white balance. We can go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. That brings this menu up. Now down here there's some droppers. So if you select this dropper where it says Sample Image to set the white point, what that's going to do is that if you have something you know is supposed to be white in the picture, it will change that to be white and it will adjust everything else accordingly in your thing. So if I come down here and I click, you're going to see it takes that spot that I clicked on, makes it white, and adjusts everything else in relationship to that. Now, that looks pretty good, except that that it sort of blows the highlights out. It's pretty good over here, but it's a little bit blown out over here. So let's step back. There's another way to do this. you can go to Image, Adjustments, and Exposure. Here you have a white point dropper as well. That one does a little bit better job. So for this image, I would suggest either using the auto color. You can try the auto tone as well. That's going to make it a little less warm. But use your eyes. Use your eyes as you do this. I'm going to step back from that. It's a little cool. Okay, so we've adjusted that. If you have anything that you need to get rid of, so in this case I have the text on the side of this image, so let's say I don't want that. I'm going to use a tool called the Spot Healing Brush, and on our tool palette over here on your left side it looks like a little band-aid. It's the Spot Healing Brush. What that allows you to do is just sort of paint out areas, and the computer will then fill in those pixels. So if I just grab this brush, now if the head of the brush is too small or too big, if you use the right bracket key or the left bracket key, it makes that brush bigger or smaller. Okay, so I'm going to make that a kind of in relationship to this piece I'm painting out, kind of that big. Now I'm just going to click and drag over that area and let go, and then the computer is going to fill those pixels in. Now this works for a lot of things. If we go back to that other image, let's say this fire thing here. Let's zoom in so we can see that a little better. And I'm going to paint over that. The computer should do a pretty good job. Now you can see some artifacting here. I can come back over and hit that again and should get that pretty well. So any kind of smudge in the background or objects you want to get rid of that's relatively small, the Spot Healing Brush will do the trick. It will not work on this door. This is too much space. The computer would not know what to do with all those pixels. Let's go back to this guy here. Okay, so I've adjusted my, I've brightened this thing up a little bit. I've still got all my detail. It looks how it's supposed to look. Remember, you are the judge of this. If it doesn't look like you remember it, then start to make some more adjustments. If you have problems, we can help you with that in class. If you get, go too far, remember you can just step back as well. Okay, so now we need to, we've made any fixes with the healing brush. Now, on this particular one, we just need really to crop and export it. So we're going to go to the crop tool. Crop tool is above the healing brush. It looks like these two little right angles that are intersecting. And I can click on that. And that is going to make a kind of a highlighted box. Now, up in the options bar up along the top, you're going to see some numbers and stuff here. I want to hit the clear button. And that's going to allow me to kind of adjust this as I want. So what I'm going to do is grab the corner of this, and I'm going to find that kind of spot that sort of fits around my piece. And I can grab the corners and adjust that, or I can grab in the center and sort of extend that out. So for your piece, depending on your depending on how you shot it, hopefully you have a little bit of room around the piece. You don't want to, you want it to be centered. You don't want a bunch of space on one side, and you don't want it to be too tight to the edge of your piece, like that. It's too tight. It feels pressed against the edge of the piece too tightly. So you want a comfortable barrier. Just try a few things and figure out what you want. Now, if your piece is a little bit crooked, notice when I'm in the crop tool, I have this grid. You can fix that by hovering outside this corner just a little bit, and you're going to see my my pointer turns into a little curve. If I click and drag, I can now kind of straighten as well. So if you find your piece is a little crooked in your image, you can kind of straighten it up. And you're going to look at the elements you know to be straight in relationship to that grid, and then let go. And then when you've got that explicitly kind of correct, you're going to hit the return key on the keyboard, and that is going to crop that image. So once you have this kind of all set, now it's time to export this particular image. We're going to go to File, Export. We want to go to Export As. And that's going to bring up this dialog box here. Now, it might say PNG at the top. Now, you can export as PNGs, but I'm going to say just export as JPEGs. As that will give you the kind of how it's going to look on the website a little bit better. So I'm going to set the JPEG there. I'm going to go down here and choose Great on the quality. Now, Jeff has stipulated in the size window that the longest dimension should be 1200 pixels. So we can see I have a image here that's 3729 by 4351 in the height. So I'm going to find the largest of those two numbers, in this case the height. I'm going to change that to 1200 pixels. If I hit return, you're going to see that changes the width to match proportionally, and that's what I want. Okay, and you're going to see that creates a 1 megabyte image. Now, if I think that's too big, I can come down here and change that to excellent, and 500 kilobytes is probably good for that. You're not going to lose much detail on that. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to go to Export down here at the bottom. Click Export, and I want to make sure that my naming convention is correct. So we're going to go to we're going to name this McDonald _A _ 001 because this is the first image. It's the full size, and then your details would be 002, 003, that kind of thing. I'm going to make sure it's saved where I want it. In this case, I'm going to save it in my demo and hit save. Now, I always like to do this. I bring up my window where I save the image, and I'm going to go highlight it, hit the space bar, and check that and make sure it looks pretty good. And another thing you can do is if you have a couple, you want to look at them in relationship to each other. So I have some other versions of it, and I can bring them over. You can see that this one is a lot warmer. Okay. And slightly different crop on this one as well. So I'm liking this one I just did for you guys better. It's a little brighter. So bring them up and look at them together and see which one you like. It's important to note that you want the warm and the cool to match between all the images. So once you kind of settle on one technique of setting the white balance, use that through all your images, and then let those match. They will match. So if I can show you here in this other one, if we go back to this one, this is really tricky to do with gray floors. So you can see in this particular one, let me duplicate this. If I go in here and let's do the image, I'm going to select that layer, image, and let's do auto tone. Watch what happens to this floor. Okay, it's a much more neutral gray. If I undo what I just did, you're going to see that floor warms up. So if I go to image, adjustments, curves, and set the white balance from here, I'm going to go up into this kind of white area. It's got kind of one look. So let's compare and contrast. Okay, so let's set the white balance with the curve, and then go and export. We'll export as. We'll set the width to 1200. Leave it on good. And let's put it on actually great. And let's export that, and I'll name that, let's just name that 11111. This is just for our demo here, our comparing. Now let's undo that and let's go through and let's edit and do the auto. Let's do auto tone. You see it brightens the whites up, but it's going to change that sort of color balance there just a little bit. And let's go to export as. Let's do the same thing. We're going to change that to great. Change that to 1200. And we are going to export this as 222222. Save. Now let's go back and check those against each other. That's 1. That's 2. Take a look at the different tones here between the grays. So, you know, in this case, they're close. I would actually say number 1 is probably a little bit better, although look at the background here. It's blown out. So for the table, it's good. For the background, it's blown out. So it's a real balancing act. You might go in between and sort of play with those. Maybe use the exposure tab to do that. So this is the first kind of step in doing this. I'll make another video on how to do the thumbnail. All right, thank you.